Marcus Wellington III had never waited for anything in his life. At 38, he commanded a business empire worth $12 billion, owned 17 properties across 4 continents, and had learned to expect instant gratification from a world that bent to his will. His custom-tailored Italian suits cost more than most people's cars, and his diamond-encrusted Patek Philippe watch could fund a small country's education budget. On this particular Tuesday evening in Manhattan, Marcus found himself at Romano's, an upscale Italian restaurant in the Upper East Side. He had arrived at 7 sharp for his business dinner with Japanese investors, but his guests were running late due to flight delays. His assistant had called ahead to explain the situation, but Marcus's patience had already worn thin. The restaurant buzzed with its usual evening crowd. Well-dressed couples shared intimate conversations over candlelit tables, while groups of friends celebrated special occasions with expensive bottles of wine. This was his world, a place where money spoke louder than words and status determined treatment. His phone buzzed with another message from his assistant. The Japanese investors would be another hour late, trapped in traffic from JFK Airport. Marcus's expression darkened as he realized his carefully scheduled evening was falling apart. In his world, time was money, and delays were unacceptable failures that someone would have to answer for. He looked around for a server, ready to vent his frustration on whoever was unlucky enough to approach his table. His jaw tightened with each passing moment, his fingers drumming impatiently on the white tablecloth. Marcus had built his fortune by demanding perfection from everyone around him, and tonight would be no different. The stage was set for a confrontation that would change everything. Chapter 2. The Working Angels. Sarah Chen had been working at Romano's for 2 years, putting herself through nursing school by serving tables 4 nights a week. At 24, she possessed the quiet determination that came from watching her immigrant parents work multiple jobs to give her opportunities they never had. Her mother cleaned office buildings at night, and her father drove a delivery truck during the day, both sacrificing their own dreams so their daughter could pursue hers. Tonight, Sarah worked alongside Emma Rodriguez, a single mother of 2, who had been at Romano's for 5 years. Emma, 31, had the weathered look of someone who had fought life's battles and refused to surrender. Her ex-husband had left when their youngest daughter was diagnosed with autism, abandoning them with medical bills and broken promises. Emma worked double shifts whenever possible, saving every penny for her daughter's therapy sessions. The 2 women had developed an unspoken partnership. Sarah helped Emma with the heavier tables when her back ached from standing all day, and Emma shared her hard-earned wisdom about handling difficult customers. They covered for each other during bathroom breaks and split the workload when one of them had a particularly demanding table. Both women had noticed the man in the expensive suit sitting alone at table 12. They recognized the type, wealthy, impatient, and likely to take out his frustrations on the staff. Emma had served enough powerful men to know that money often came with an inflated sense of entitlement and a tendency to treat service workers as invisible obstacles rather than human beings. Sarah's shift supervisor had specifically assigned her to table 12, knowing she handled difficult customers with grace. But as she approached the billionaire's table with water and bread, she could feel the tension radiating from his rigid posture and the way his fingers drummed impatiently on the tablecloth. She took a deep breath and smiled, preparing herself for what she instinctively knew would be a challenging encounter. Chapter 3. The Eruption. Marcus looked up as Sarah approached his table, his eyes immediately cataloging her simple black uniform, practical shoes, and the slight nervousness in her movements. To him, she represented everything he despised about inefficiency: young, probably uneducated, and certainly not sophisticated enough to understand the gravity of his situation. "You're late," he said, before Sarah could even speak, his voice cutting through the restaurant's ambient noise. "I've been sitting here for 20 minutes without so much as a glass of water." Sarah's heart sank. She had been covering 3 other tables and had only just been assigned to his section. "I'm so sorry, sir. I just received your table from—" "I don't want to hear your excuses," Marcus interrupted, his voice rising enough to catch the attention of nearby diners. "I have a $12 billion deal hanging in the balance, and I'm wasting time because you people can't do your jobs properly." The words hit Sarah like physical blows. The casual cruelty, the dismissive way he said "you people," made her cheeks burn with humiliation. She could feel other customers turning to stare, their conversations quieting as they witnessed the scene. Frustrated? Marcus's laugh was bitter and sharp when Sarah tried to apologize again.
"I'm not frustrated, I'm appalled. This is supposed to be a fine dining establishment, not some roadside diner where incompetent servers keep billionaires waiting." Emma, who had been serving the adjacent table, noticed the commotion and quietly moved closer. She recognized the look on Sarah's face, the same expression she'd worn countless times when customers had berated her for circumstances beyond her control. Marcus continued his tirade, his voice growing louder and more aggressive.
"Do you have any idea what my time is worth? Every minute I sit here waiting is money lost. But I suppose someone like you wouldn't understand business, would you?" The restaurant had grown noticeably quieter, with conversations stopping mid-sentence as diners turned to watch the spectacle. Sarah felt tears threatening, but refused to let them fall. Chapter 4. The witness at table 7, retired professor Dr. Janet Morrison sat with her daughter, celebrating her 70th birthday over a quiet dinner. Dr. Morrison had spent 40 years teaching sociology at Columbia University, studying the dynamics of power and privilege in American society. She had written extensively about class consciousness and the ways wealth could corrupt basic human decency. What she witnessed at Table 12 was a textbook example of everything she had spent her career documenting. She watched Marcus's aggressive posturing, noted how he used his wealth as a weapon, and observed the way the young waitress struggled to maintain her professionalism in the face of his verbal assault. Dr. Morrison's trained eye also caught details that other diners missed. She saw how the other waitress, older, with the tired eyes of someone who had seen too much, positioned herself protectively near her younger colleague. She noticed the way Sarah's hands trembled slightly as she tried to write down Marcus's order, and how her breathing had become shallow and rapid. The professor had spent decades studying bullies, and she recognized Marcus's tactics immediately. He was using his economic power to humiliate someone he perceived as beneath him, performing his dominance for an audience of witnesses. It was a display of cruel privilege that she had seen countless times in her research, but rarely so blatantly exhibited in public. Other diners were having their own reactions. A young couple at table 3 looked horrified, but seemed frozen, uncertain whether to intervene. An elderly businessman at the bar nodded approvingly, apparently viewing Marcus's behavior as appropriate treatment for incompetent service. A group of friends at a corner table whispered among themselves, some pulling out phones to record the confrontation. The restaurant staff watched nervously from their stations, unsure whether to intervene. The manager, clearly recognizing Marcus as a wealthy customer, appeared torn between protecting his employee and appeasing someone who could potentially damage the restaurant's reputation. Dr. Morrison felt her own anger rising as she watched the scene unfold, knowing that sometimes the most powerful interventions came from unexpected sources. Chapter 5. The breaking point. Marcus's verbal assault continued to escalate, his voice now carrying across the entire restaurant. "This is exactly what's wrong with this country," he declared, gesturing dismissively at Sarah. "People with no skills, no education, no drive, expecting to be treated like they matter. You're replaceable. There are 1,000 girls just like you who could do this job." Sarah's composure finally cracked. A single tear rolled down her cheek, which she quickly wiped away, but not before Marcus noticed. His smile was cold and satisfied, as if her visible distress validated his superiority. "Are you crying?" he asked mockingly. "This is a business establishment, not a therapy session. If you can't handle simple criticism, maybe you should find another line of work." Emma had heard enough. She stepped forward, her own professional facade falling away to reveal the fierce protectiveness of a mother who had fought too many battles to watch someone else's daughter be destroyed by a bully. Her hands were steady, her voice calm but filled with quiet strength. "Sir," Emma said, her tone respectful but firm, I understand you're having a difficult evening, but who are you? Marcus snapped, turning his attention to Emma. I didn't ask for another server. I asked for competent service, not more incompetence. I'm Emma Rodriguez, she replied, standing straighter. I've been working here for 5 years, and I'd like to tell you something about Sarah. Marcus laughed harshly. I don't need to hear about your personal dramas. I need my order taken properly and my dinner served without delay. But Emma continued, undeterred by his dismissal. The restaurant had grown completely silent now. Every conversation stopped, every eye focused on the confrontation. Marcus's face reddened with anger at being challenged by someone he considered beneath his notice. I don't care about her sob story, he said venomously. Everyone has problems. That's no excuse for incompetent service. Emma's eyes never left his face. You mentioned your $12 billion deal. That's impressive. But let me tell you about Sarah's deal. Chapter 6. The Revelation. Emma's voice carried across the silent restaurant, each word measured and deliberate. Sarah works here 4 nights a week to pay for nursing school. She's in her final year, maintaining a 3.8 GPA while working 25 hours a week. She sends money home to help support her parents, who are both working multiple jobs to make ends meet. Marcus tried to interrupt, but Emma continued, her voice gaining strength. Her parents came here from China with nothing. Her father speaks 3 languages, but drives a delivery truck because his engineering degree isn't recognized here. Her mother was a teacher in Beijing, but cleans offices at night because she wanted her daughter to have opportunities she never had. The restaurant remained transfixed, diners setting down their forks and wine glasses to listen. Dr. Morrison felt her heart racing, recognizing that she was witnessing something extraordinary. A moment where the power dynamic was being challenged by someone with nothing to lose but everything to defend. Sarah hasn't eaten a full meal in 2 days because she's saving money for her clinical supplies. She walks to work to save bus fare, and she studies medical textbooks during her breaks. She's not here because she lacks ambition or education. She's here because she's building a future where she can help sick children get better. Marcus's face had gone from red to pale, but Emma wasn't finished. You want to know what her real deal is? In 6 months, she'll graduate and become a pediatric nurse. She'll spend her days saving the lives of children whose parents can't afford the best medical care. She'll hold scared kids while they get shots, comfort families facing their worst nightmares, and work 16-hour shifts because she believes every child deserves a chance to live. The silence in the restaurant was now complete, broken only by the soft sounds of the kitchen staff who had stopped working to listen. Even the background music seemed to have been turned off. So yes, Emma said, her voice steady and strong. Sarah's deal might not be worth $12 billion, but it's worth something your money can't buy. The chance to make the world a better place. Chapter 7. The Truth Unveiled. Emma took a step closer to Marcus, her voice dropping to a conversational tone that somehow carried more weight than shouting. You mentioned that everyone has problems. You're right about that. I'm a single mother of 2 daughters. My youngest has autism, and the therapy she needs costs more than I make in 3 months. My ex-husband left us when the diagnosis came, decided he couldn't handle having a defective child. The restaurant remained absolutely silent, the only sounds coming from the kitchen where someone had turned off the sizzling grills. Marcus found himself unable to look away from Emma's eyes, which held a depth of experience and pain that his wealth had never allowed him to understand. I work double shifts here whenever I can. I've been doing it for 5 years, watching my daughter slowly improve with each therapy session I can afford. Do you know what it's like to choose between your child's medicine and your electricity bill? To count every penny and still come up short? Marcus's mouth felt dry, his usual confidence evaporating under Emma's unwavering gaze. That's not my problem, Emma finished. You're right. It's not your problem. Just like Sarah's situation isn't your problem. But here's what I've learned in 5 years of serving people like you. The difference between a person and a human being isn't in their bank account. It's in how they treat others when they have the power to hurt them. Dr. Morrison felt tears in her eyes, recognizing the profound truth in Emma's words. Around the restaurant, other diners were equally moved, some openly crying, others looking ashamed of their own past behavior. "You have $12 billion, Emma said, her voice carrying across the silent room. "That's more money than most people can even imagine. But what you don't have is the courage to treat another human being with basic dignity." Marcus tried to regain his composure, but something in Emma's presence had stripped away his usual armor of arrogance and entitlement. The comparison hung in the air like a challenge, exposing the vast gulf between his perceived problems and the real struggles of the women serving him. Chapter 8. The Moment of Truth. Emma's voice dropped to barely above a whisper, but in the absolute silence of the restaurant, every word carried clearly to every table. "You want to know what real power is? It's Sarah getting up every morning, knowing she'll face people like you and choosing to be kind anyway. It's me watching my daughter struggle with simple tasks that other children master easily, and celebrating every small victory like it's a miracle." Marcus felt something breaking inside him, a wall he had built around his heart to protect himself from feeling anything that might interfere with his relentless pursuit of success. He looked at Sarah, really looked at her for the first time, and saw not an incompetent server, but a young woman with dreams and determination. Real power is choosing to lift people up instead of tearing them down. It's recognizing that the person serving your dinner might be working towards something bigger than you can imagine. It's understanding that your words have the power to destroy someone's day or inspire them to keep fighting. The restaurant had become a cathedral of silence, every person present sensing they were witnessing something profound. Marcus's hands trembled as he reached for his water glass, his throat suddenly dry. "You asked Sarah if she understands business. Let me tell you what she understands. She understands that every dollar she earns here brings her one step closer to saving a child's life. She understands that kindness is the most valuable currency in the world." Marcus's vision blurred as unexpected tears formed in his eyes. He thought of his own childhood, of the nanny who had raised him while his parents built their fortune, of the countless people who had shaped his success but whose names he had forgotten. "You have more money than you could spend in 10 lifetimes, Emma said, her voice becoming gentler. "But what you don't have is the one thing that makes life worth living. The ability to connect with another human being without calculating what they can do for you." The silence stretched on, broken only by the soft sounds of people wiping their eyes. Marcus felt as though he was seeing himself clearly for the first time in years. Chapter 9. The Awakening. Marcus sat in stunned silence, Emma's words reverberating through his mind like echoes in an empty cathedral. For the first time in decades, he felt truly seen, not as the powerful billionaire whose approval everyone sought, but as a man who had lost his way in the pursuit of success. He looked around the restaurant and saw the faces of people who had been strangers moments before, but now felt like witnesses to his judgment. Some looked at him with pity, others with disgust, but many showed something he wasn't expecting: hope. Marcus began, his voice cracking slightly. He cleared his throat and tried again. "I apologize." The words felt foreign in his mouth, rusty from disuse. He couldn't remember the last time he had genuinely apologized to anyone, let alone someone he considered beneath his social station. Emma remained watchful, her arms crossed, clearly not ready to accept such a simple offering. "You apologize? That's it? You humiliate a young woman in front of a room full of people, and you think, 'I apologize makes it all better'?" Marcus felt heat rise in his cheeks, but for the first time, it wasn't anger, it was shame. "No," he said quietly. "No, it doesn't make it better. Nothing I say can undo what I did." He stood up slowly, his legs feeling unsteady. The restaurant remained silent, everyone watching to see what would happen next. Marcus looked directly at Sarah, forcing himself to meet her eyes. "I don't know your story," he said, his voice carrying across the quiet room. "I didn't ask about your dreams, your struggles, or your goals. I saw only what I wanted to see, someone I could blame for my own frustration and impatience. Sarah's expression softened slightly, though she remained cautious. Marcus continued, each word seeming to cost him something. "You're right," he said to Emma. "I don't understand real pressure. I've been so focused on accumulating wealth that I forgot what it means to be wealthy in the things that actually matter." Chapter 10. The Transformation. Marcus reached into his wallet and pulled out a business card, but instead of handing it to Sarah, he tore it in half. The gesture was symbolic, witnessed by everyone in the restaurant, and it represented the rejection of his old identity as someone who used his power as a weapon. "My mother was a waitress," Marcus said, his voice now carrying clearly throughout the restaurant. "She worked at a diner in Detroit, saving every penny so I could go to college. She dealt with customers who treated her exactly the way I just treated you, and she came home exhausted and heartbroken every night." Sarah's eyes widened with understanding. Marcus's voice cracked as he continued. "She died when I was in graduate school, still working double shifts to support my dreams. I promised myself I would never be powerless again, that I would never let anyone look down on me the way they looked down on her." The restaurant remained transfixed, sensing they were witnessing something extraordinary. Marcus wiped his eyes, not caring that his vulnerability was being witnessed by dozens of strangers. But somewhere along the way, I became the person I had promised to fight against. I became the customer who made my mother cry into her apron when she thought no one was looking. Emma's expression had softened considerably, though she remained protective of Sarah. "Understanding where your cruelty comes from doesn't excuse it," she said quietly. "No," Marcus agreed. "It doesn't, but understanding it might help me change it." He turned to Sarah, who had been listening with tears in her eyes. "I want to do more than apologize. I want to help you finish nursing school. I want to pay for your tuition, your books, your clinical supplies, everything you need to achieve your dreams." Sarah gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. I can't accept that. It's too much." "It's not enough," Marcus replied. "It's not enough to make up for what I said, but it's a start." He turned to Emma. "And I want to help your daughter get the therapy she needs. Because you reminded me that the most successful people aren't the ones who die with the most money, they're the ones who use their resources to lift others up." Chapter 11. The New Beginning. The restaurant erupted in spontaneous applause, with diners rising from their seats to show their approval. But Marcus wasn't finished. He raised his hand for silence, then addressed the entire room. "I want everyone here to understand something. What happened tonight wasn't just about me being rude to a waitress. It was about the way our society has trained us to value people based on their economic status rather than their character." Dr. Morrison felt her heart swell with pride and hope. She had spent her career studying these dynamics, but seeing someone actively work to change them was inspiring beyond words. "I'm going to do more than help Sarah and Emma," Marcus continued. "I'm going to establish a foundation that provides educational assistance to service workers pursuing careers in healthcare, education, and social work. I'm going to create a scholarship program that recognizes character, compassion, and the willingness to serve others." The applause resumed, but Marcus had one more thing to say. He looked directly at Emma, his voice carrying the weight of genuine gratitude. "You said that the difference between a person and a human being isn't in their bank account. It's in how they treat others when they have the power to hurt them. Thank you for having the courage to remind me what it means to be human." Emma smiled through her tears, then said something that would be remembered by everyone present for the rest of their lives. "The real measure of wealth isn't how much you have, but how much you're willing to give away to help others succeed." The restaurant fell silent once more, but this time it was a silence of reflection rather than shock. Marcus nodded slowly, understanding that his true education was just beginning. As the evening wound down, Marcus sat with Sarah and Emma, no longer the intimidating billionaire, but simply a man learning to use his resources for good. The foundation he promised that night would go on to help thousands of people pursue their dreams. But its true legacy would be the reminder that every person deserves to be treated with dignity. The story of that evening spread far beyond the walls of Romano's, becoming a reminder that sometimes the most powerful transformations happen when we have the courage to see each other as human beings. The one sentence that had silenced the whole restaurant became more than just words. It became a philosophy that would guide lives and inspire change for years to come.